So yesterday, the 27th of November, it was exposed or shown by Richard Lewis, the journalist, that a Reddit mod on the League of Legends subreddit made some very peculiar statements about Thorin and one of Thorin's videos. So the backstory is this. Thorin released a video where he talked about females and gender in esports, and he tried to explain some of the reasons or the factors in why females don't do well, because we've essentially had zero pros in the female scene, zero females in the professional scene. Females tend to go into female-only leagues or female-only teams, which are provably worse than the male teams in terms of performance. So I thought it was a very good video. Talked a bit about generalities in mentality or genetics and biology, the difference between men and women in those senses. Miss Harvey, I believe, a CLG Red player, a female player, said she totally agrees with it. And myself, I watched it a handful of times, probably twice, I think, just once for fun, the second time because I wanted to examine it more and just sort of test my own beliefs, and then a third time in preparation for this video. So I obviously think it's a pretty decent video, and I thought it was thought-provoking. So some of the sexist statements Thorin made are, quote, "I'm watching esports to watch the best competitors of any gender. I don't think of race or gender when I'm thinking of esports games." Quote, or, "If women wanted to play games, and if women were in mass playing, and if women were trying to play as pros, and if some of them were good enough, and they were being discriminated against, I would absolutely be making this video. Like, isn't this disgraceful, the way men have this certain way of thinking about them, and they're keeping them out," in reference to women. So I obviously myself do not think Thorin is sexist or anything along those lines. But the video was removed from the League of Legends subreddit, and on the League of Meta forum on Reddit, someone was asking why, and I quote ReganDryke, the moderator who we're talking about here, said, "It's sexist as fuck, and hate speech isn't allowed on r/League of Legends." End quote. His whole speech is promoting sexist theory. Now, there's absolutely nothing resembling hate speech in this video. And before we go into legal terms, I'm not a lawyer. Obviously, I'm not a legal expert. I don't work in law. I have not studied law. I have a layman's or a slightly better than a layman's perspective because I'm a journalism student, and I've studied things such as libel and defamation to an extent. So I have some knowledge in some of the legal terms I'm going to be using today, but do not take anything I say as legal advice or the perspective of a legal expert or lawyer, because I am not one and I do not claim to be. Now, he accuses Thorin of using hate speech and being sexist. So initially, let's go into the definition of hate speech. So hate speech outside of the law is loosely defined as speech that attacks a person's group on the basis of attributes such as gender, ethnic origin, religion, race, disability, or sexual orientation. Now, was Thorin attacking women? And I want to reiterate that it includes the word attacking. If he's attacking women, so then he's maliciously going around and making statements about women because he hates them, and he thinks they're scum and they're beneath him, and he doesn't want women in esports, and he doesn't want them on the highest level, and he hates them as human beings, then where's the proof? ReganDryke, where is the proof that he's attacking women? Then ReganDryke could say, well, I didn't mean hate speech in the colloquial sense of the term, in normal vocabulary. I meant in the legal term of hate speech. Okay, fine. Then let's pull up the definition of hate speech in law. So in American law, hate speech is any speech, gesture, or conduct, writing, or display which is forbidden because it may incite violence or prejudicial action against or by a protected individual or group, or because it disparages or intimidates a protected individual or group. So Thorin, referring to studies and biological differences between women, is hate speech which should be forbidden because it will incite violence or prejudice against women. I mean, I don't even have to go into this one. It's retarded. And then Bryce Blum, aka Esports Law, on Twitter, he said, quote, "Here's the thing. Hate speech, in quotations, has a very specific legal meaning. Very specific legal meaning. This wasn't even close." Now, I'm obviously not a lawyer. I defer judgment of these things to lawyers when possible. And it looks like, from multiple people's perspective who have taken a look at this, the ReganDryke comments that this is hate speech is it's not founded in fact, because it doesn't match up to the layman's colloquial definition of hate speech, nor does it match up to the legal definition of hate speech. So let's go on to the actual discussion that ReganDryke had on the League of Meta forum. So he says, fine, it doesn't matter. It's sexist as fuck, and hate speech isn't allowed on r/League of Legends. The next person goes, what? There is absolutely nothing resembling hate speech in the video. I challenge you to provide an example. And then ReganDryke says, quote, look, I'm not interested in rewatching 40 minutes of Thorin rambling. If you want to understand why I'm characterizing this video as sexist, I suggest you write down all the unsourced claims that Thorin makes. Parentheses, there is plenty, which is normal in a video, parentheses. Replace them within a race debate context and look if it sounds like a racist is trying to justify his racism. If it does, congrats, it's sexist. If it doesn't, come back to me with your list and we're going to talk about it again. Regardless, that video isn't about League of Legends. Oh, this is important. He says, regardless, that video isn't about League of Legends, League esports, or League culture. He says, so ReganDryke actually believes that a discussion about women in esports, and League of Legends is in esports, and the effect that has on the ecosystem has nothing to do with League of Legends, League esports, or League culture. Okay, I'll continue. It is a poor tentative at explaining the lack of female in esports in general, with no, and then there's a line through it, barely any source or studies to back it up that shouldn't have been made. And by the way, ReganDryke's grammar is horrendous. It's very hard to read this out loud and not sound like a dumbass. Okay, now let's break that down a little bit. He's essentially saying that if you imagine Thorin in a scene where he's a white guy talking about race and saying white people are better than another race, then if that sounds racist to you, then that means he's a sexist. There's one problem here. He never said anything about race in this video. He's never implied or said white people are better than other people. but ReganDryke is literally trying to make the equivalent, saying that if you can imagine Thorin saying that white people are better than other people, then therefore he is also sexist. I mean, that's literally the logic he's making. And if you want to make a grand statement like somebody like Thorin, if you say somebody is racist, or if you say they are sexist, you have to back it up. There's a saying that I really like. It says, to make extraordinary claims, you need extraordinary evidence. Okay? So if I tell you the world is flat, the earth is flat, and you go, do you have evidence? And then I say something like, I don't really need evidence. Imagine a scene where you're walking for 10,000 miles and the earth doesn't curve. And in fact, I had a device where every mile it walked, it proved more that the earth is flat. And if you can imagine a scene where that happened, and in that scene it feels like the earth is flat, then in that imaginary world the earth is flat, and therefore, if you can imagine it, then in the real world it is flat also. You would think I'm a fucking retard. That's what you would think. And this is what this guy, literally, that's the logic he used. This is anti-intellectualism at the highest level. And this guy is running the League of Legends subreddit. This guy gets to censor the news, censor the opinions, and censor what gets to go on the subreddit for hundreds of thousands of people to read. It's like a dictator gone wild. It's like Kim Jong-un choosing our news in the West and the opinions we're allowed to read. I mean, it's the highest level of like Orwellian retarded doublespeak I can imagine. Like a 3-year-old can come up with better logic. If you went up to a 3-year-old and used the logic that ReganDryke used to justify his statements that Thorin is a sexist, they would think you're an idiot. And this guy is in a position of power. Now, obviously, I think ReganDryke is a dumbass. And I think everything he said was incorrect. So I am accusing, much like he accused Thorin of hate speech and sexism, and in some senses he accused him of racism almost, even though he never said a word about race. I'm going to accuse ReganDryke of libel and defamation. Now, obviously, ReganDryke, you're not very familiar with legal terms because you use them very loosely and irresponsibly. So I'm going to educate you a little bit about libel and defamation. Sound good? Now, libel is a written false statement that is damaging to a person's character or livelihood. For example, Stephen Glass, he committed libel. He was a journalist who made up false claims about almost everything under the sun, but he claimed that a politician was having extramarital affairs. That was libel because it hurt that politician's job prospects. It hurt his character. It was all over the news. I don't think he got reelected because of Stephen Glass's articles. So these false statements ruined this guy's life, basically. And it was provably false. But Stephen Glass presented it as fact, and the guy should have sued Stephen Glass, but he was not able to because of a lot of weird legal shit that happened with that case. Now, defamation and libel is written defamation or published defamation. Defamation is a civil wrong that makes the person doing it open to lawsuits for damages. So, essentially, if you say something that is incorrect about a person, and that is possibly damaging to that person's character, or the person's livelihood, or their job, or their social standing, that person can sue you. So, ReganDryke, and I am not a lawyer, I am speaking from a layman's perspective, but I think Thorin should sue you because you are a person in a position of power claiming that another public person is racist. Excuse me. You did not specifically say he was racist. You said specifically that he was sexist, using hate speech, and he was promoting sexist theory. So I obviously think this is unacceptable. We should not allow this to continue. I think we need to take our community back. Regardless of your personal politics, whether you're liberal or you are conservative, we can't let bullshit like this happen in our scene. It's not about being pro female or feminist. It's about morality and not letting evil people attempt to destroy other people's lives based on lies. So I said it on Twitter. I wonder what's more evil, talking about gender from an educated perspective, or defaming a person's character and endangering their job. I hope that the Reddit admins catch on to this. I hope the other Reddit mods catch on to this. I hope a lot of people catch on to this, because I think it's disgusting, and I don't want this guy moderating the subreddit anymore. Thank you for listening, and please stop this guy. I don't like him, and I don't want him literally being able to censor the news and the opinions I see.